What's up, everybody? Welcome to Cat and Beats, and welcome to the final episode where we're going to be mastering in the box using only Ableton 10.1. Alright, so please make sure to check out all the previous episodes as well so you can see how we got here to begin with, and you can check them out and make sure to like and subscribe. And if you want a copy of this project file, become a member of my Patreon and you can support this tiny little channel and support that I can buy some groceries sometimes instead of ramen noodles. Alright, so check this out. We have this little limiter here, and I put it there for a reason, because our job right now is to master, right? So what is mastering and how do you do what it is that you're doing? Basically, our role right now is to make the final copy. Now, back in the day with vinyl mastering, you would have physical limitations. So you would have the vinyl mastering engineer, and the vinyl mastering engineer would know what physical limitations there would be. For instance, you couldn't have low sub bass. You couldn't have low wide bass as well, because the needle would literally skip off. So the final mastering engineer would make sure that those things were taken care of so that the final vinyl copy that all the other copies would have been made out of would copy correct. All right, so right now, let's fast forward to 2019. We have digital limitations that we need to consider. So that's where we kind of have to make sure that our limiter is set correct so that these digital limitations are taken into account. Now, what are these digital limitations, you might ask? Well, I feel like a teacher. These digital limitations are pretty easy to understand. You basically have the waveform that we're going to spit out at the end of this, and that's going to be the final copy. And this is an online release, so it's going to go to SoundCloud, it's going to go to YouTube, Spotify, iTunes, whatever else. And when it goes from waveform to one of those online platforms, so let's take Spotify for instance, then instead of having the master be called master.wave, WAV, it will be master.ogg. So it will get compressed to an OGG. And when it gets compressed, basically the file size goes from 64 megabytes to about 3 or something like that, depending on the case here. Now, with that being said, when it gets compressed to OGG or MP3 or AAV or whatever else, you will immediately add 1 dB of gain. Now, with that 1 dB of gain, if we would master it to, for instance, 0 dB, then every single time you're going to have 1 dB of digital clipping going on. And that doesn't really sound very sexy. But basically, the solution is get your ceiling, set it to -1 dB, done. Okay, so that's just the first quick one on limiting. But now let's go back and actually do some mastering as well. Well, it's basically called pre-mastering. So the actual bounce is called mastering. So you make the final master, and then the stuff before is called pre-master. So let's do the pre-master stuff. All right. Any mastering chain is pretty much always EQ, compression. Let's use the glue compressor, and a limiter. Not particularly in this order. It can also be compressor, EQ, limiter, or EQ, compressor, limiter. It doesn't really matter that much right now. We first have to listen and figure out what we want to do. So let's have a listen to the track and have a feel for what we could possibly do. Does it need more low end? Does it need more top end? Let's just have that first. Sorry, I was listening still in my mixing mindset, but for the mastering mindset, what we need to do is understand that we're limited and we're not able to go back into the mix. When you're in the mix, you can go to every individual little element. But right now, what stood out to me was that chord had a little bit too much side, so I just kind of pushed that back. All right, overall, There's a little bit of dirt going on. Let me just turn this on. Hello. There's a little bit of dirt going on here. So that, I want to probably get rid of that. Well, that's pretty much the only thing that's really that's bothering me right now. But before we get into that, normally what I do is I try to get some color in it before I even get to the rest of the stage. And the thing that's slept on quite a lot is called the color limiter. And instead of using this as an actual limiter, so adding this loudness knob would, for instance, well, you can already see it adds a whole bunch of crap. We don't want that. We just want to saturate a tiny little bit and use this little color knob. This color knob will basically EQ like this, so adding low end or top end. So I kind of felt that there needs to be a bit of sparkle. So let's just first do that and have a little check to see if that would sound nice, yes or no. Okay, so I'm happy with that. Only thing I'm noticing is that the EEs and AAs and it is a little bit over the top. So next up, what I'm going to be doing before I get into the rest of the chain is to just de-ess a tad with the built-in de-esser from Ableton as well. Hello, why don't we open up here? Thank you. All right, so there we go. And let's just find what's annoying. I'm just going to group this really fast as well so we can just double check later on. So let's just find where the frequency is that we are going to try and compress a little bit. That's what a de-esser does. It's just compression so that you get rid of that type of sound. Well, that's annoying to me. So there's a lot of information at the 6.25 kilohertz area. So what I'll do is put this frequency to 6.25 kilohertz area and put the compression on. Now this little internal sidechain compression will now cut down on that. So the attack is set to really fast, release is set to nice and chill. And we're just going to use this threshold to press it down a bit. So I really appreciate that because it's just calmed down a bit. I don't need it to be like super sparkly and high-endy. I kind of need it to just vibe and be nice, you know? So I'll just turn those off. I'll just call this bit of color. By the way, if you guys want this project file, it is totally available. The only thing I'm asking you is to come over to Patreon. Would help out a lot. Then you get the project file and a whole bunch of nerdy stuff. Okay, let's move on to the EQ8. And with the EQ8, I just want to have a little feel around of where I could possibly bump and or cut to make the track sound a little bit better. We could potentially go into mid-side mode as well to, fix some things in the side, fix some things in the mid. But let's just first start out with the stereo placement and just have a little look around here. The two things I already noticed is that I wanted to cut that and I wanted to cut the that type of thing. So let's have a little look. I'm gonna immediately already go into mid-side mode because I know those drums are in the mid. That. I kind of want that sub to be a little bit louder, so what we could potentially do is just cut the low end, and then at the same time bump it a tiny bit. Let's bump it a little bit softer. I'll just use this instead to be a little bit more specific. That sounds all right. With Ableton's EQ, like these cuts seem to be probably, that doesn't look like it's that much, but this is already like 3.6 dB, so just adding a tiny bit is going to go a longer way here. Let's also just quickly check the side. Now, most people will just do this and then bump the top end like this, like that, and then that would be like mastering done, slap limiter on, and done. But what I want to do first is just listen to the low end, because this track is really quite wide. If we would cut away too much, then we will lose a lot of warmth. See? I'm going to bump that instead. So I cut that there, I'm going to bump that there, get that warmth thing that I wanted to have. Let's have a little look up here. Maybe we can get rid of that. So this sounds is completely counterintuitive to probably what every mastering engineer normally does, but I'm going to do this anyway because it just sounds better. I want it darker. I don't want it more toppy. So yeah, I like that. I like that a little bit better than the other version. Okay. I'll leave that EQ as that is because I am quite happy with that sound. It sounds warm. It sounds sexy. Let me turn off this limiter. And now let's go into the compression part of it. Now, right now, we don't want to compress very heavy. There is already compression going on. We have compression going on the, the drums already. We have compression going on harmonics probably, and vocals there's compression going on. Now to compress again with like heavy amounts, like 4 or 5 dB or whatever, that would be a bit much. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to just have a slow attack time, fast release time as you normally do, because I want it to be like nice and like that. Ratio of 2 to 1, so I don't want too much like slamming. Again, just saying the same thing over and over. And then just put the threshold down for a second and just have a little listen to what it sounds like with the compression all the way down. What I'm listening for is the first initial transient coming in. So I hope that you just heard as well that with faster attacks, less of the original transient comes in, and with slower attacks, more of the original transient comes in. So I'm going to go slowest attack setting here, just because I like my round kick. I don't want to make the kick even more like as it is already, because like, I mean, look at this. Look at what I had to do. You know what I mean? So I don't want to do anything extra. Anyway, let's just go over here and we're going to just bump down a bit. Now, there's a couple of more things that we can do. Instead of actually compressing with the gain reduction going on the kick drum every single time, we can also just do some internal side chaining to make sure that the kick drum can remain, because I kind of like that sexy vibe. And I'm gonna compress some more and then use this frequency knob to kind of dial in the bass. I'm just going to get another EQ behind this, but I'm already happy with that compression, by the way. I think that sounds pretty good. I'm just going to dial down the bass a little bit. Yeah, I think that's about fine. And next up is the last thing that we really have to... Actually, let me just put that on the middle only. Okay, next up, the last thing that we're going to have to do... Let me just turn all this stuff off. is to limit it. Now, how do you know how loud you need to go? Now, unfortunately, Ableton doesn't come with an LUFS meter. It comes with an RMS meter. And that RMS meter is right over here. You can just open it up like this. And it's pretty much 2 lines here. The first line, the really bright green line, is the RMS value that you need to be looking at. And you pretty much just want that green line to be bumping between, between 6 and 12, and then closer towards 6. Then you're going to hit about -8 RMS. And then so probably a couple of you are going to be like, yeah, but you need to have -14 LUFS. Well, right now we're looking at short term, not long term. So over the whole song, most likely we're going to be averaging out about -14 LUFS. And for this tiny part where we're in the chorus, we're going to go for about -9 to -7, somewhere in there. What we want to really listen to right now is, are we going to have any type of distortions coming in? Because a limiter, the only thing it is a, nothing goes over the top of it and everything gets crushed down. So it's a very fast attack, very fast release time, and it will literally crush. Let me actually show you what limiters do when you over limit something. I made a little limiter with a just a gain thing, just so that you know. So when we just like slam it, that's the sound that will happen. So it gets really distorted, and that's the type of sound that you kind of don't want to have. So just pay attention to that so that you don't have that thing coming through. All right, so -9-ish, somewhere there. Let's shoot that way. This is funny. How are we at -4 on this thing? I do not know what is going on. So I think that's correct, but this is like the only meter that we have. I just want to quickly double check with Ozone 8 because they have a meter in there, which I know inside out. So I just want to quickly check that. But then after that, we are pretty much done. So I'm just going to quickly look over here. So I think we're going to be, let's have a look. According to Ableton, we are hitting -6-ish. So we should be hitting like -7-ish over here. Ish. Let's see. Well, I can't read this thing for shit, so let's keep on pushing. To be honest, I don't really like the way that sounds. It's that kick drum that was where I had to do that really hard kick, that 15 dB cut already. It's coming through way too much, like it's coming through. So I'm just not gonna make this song that loud. Okay, good. So I'll leave that the way that is. I think we have reached the end of this whole mixing and mastering series. All right, so now that we've set everything up, we don't have the gain reduction over the top. I want to do the last little thing, and that is to just do one overall check, one overall play. So the way I do this, I also get, I always get a key map, so Command K, and then I just key map everything except for the limiter. And then I can kind of judge-ish if it sounds good or not. Did I make the right decisions or not? So let's just have a quick little listen overall. I'm just going to click number 1 here and there, and then see how it sounds, if it sounds better and or not. Because if it sounds worse, well, I'm going to have to spend some more time making it sound better. Perfect. Now I'm actually happy with it. It sounds a little bit warmer, and that's kind of what I wanted to do to begin with. That color limiter really added in quite a lot of that warmish flavor that I wanted. Overall, I would really like to move out of this of only Ableton, but I highly suggest that use stock plugins at the best of your ability, because you can really get some nice results out of it. You just have to play with it and have a good time with it. So I hope you've enjoyed this whole massive series. If you have done so and you've actually come to the end of the video, congratulations. Maybe give this video a like, because it would really help me out, and I'm completely shit at YouTube. And subscribe if you haven't done so already. Comment any of your thoughts as well. And if you want the file, Patreon, so then I can buy groceries, would be great. All right, much love. I spent too much time on this project. Bye.